right. Hear ye, hear ye. I hereby call this meeting of the Smart Cities and Service Improvement Committees to order. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Jimenez. Councilmember Davis. Here. Mayor Licata. Councilmember Jones. Vice Mayor Jones is not here. Chair Landiab.
Present.
We have a quorum.
All right. Do we have any changes to the orders of the day? No? All right. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
All right. Any opposed? No? All in favor? Aye. All right. Can I get a motion for the consent calendar or any changes to it?
There's no consent.
Oh, all right. All right. I'm just going down the list. I'm very nothing on the consent calendar, she says. All right. We'll go on to reports to the committee. D1, take it away, guys.
Great, thanks. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Honorable Mayor, committee members, members of the public and city staff. Dolan Beckel, Director of the Office of Civic Innovation and Digital Strategy here in the front box, joined by Deputy City Manager Kip Harkness and Smart City Manager Reggie Nair. To frame today's meeting, I'm going to follow through with the commitment to Councilmember Dieppe and introduce my first and perhaps last pop culture reference and PowerPoint animation to make our committee meetings more entertaining. I'm going to introduce Mr. Peabody, Sherman, and the Wayback Machine, who are going to take us back to March 2016. So,
why are we going to March 2016, Mr. Peabody?
Because, as the Wayback Machine takes us there, we're going to go back to the Smart City Vision. March marks the third anniversary of the Smart City Vision. The council approved this vision and this single statement by the mayor that was what Kip and I were given to create the Office of Civic Innovation and Digital Strategy 7 months later. 2.5 years have passed and we've been able to develop a sustainable funding model, largely sourced by the private sector, develop a team within the office and across the city departments, go from this very general vision and vague statement to a specific smart city roadmap, formulate innovative strategies, and begin execution of these strategies at scale across the city. Today, we'll talk about a number of successes, but we'll also see that the city continues to be challenged in consistent execution at scale. And in the days and months ahead, we'll be faced with some difficult choices between additional investments in complex technology planning and delivery and laser-focused prioritization. Before we begin, I'd also like to highlight 3 victories since last committee meeting. First, the approval of the Digital Inclusion Fund to connect 50,000 households over the next 10 years. Second, signature of the AT&T Verizon agreements for $4 million of in-kind smart city solutions that advance public safety in about a dozen parks through LED replacement and digital infrastructure nodes and provide real-time monitoring of traffic congestion on over 300 miles of city streets. And last, and you might say at last, on Tuesday we started the process of a soft launch of opening up the free public Wi-Fi portion of AccessHe Side, which should start tomorrow at the end of day, and an additional 6,000 households, non-student households in the James Lick Wi-Fi coverage area will start receiving free internet access at home. Councilmember Davis applauded, I'd like to point that out. These 3 projects make significant strides for our equity and smart infrastructure themes. Today's committee meeting will focus on user-friendly government and smart infrastructure. First, we'll resume the Smart City Roadmap status updates on high-priority projects. This will be the first project status update for the Roadmap 2.0, and we can expect a longer than normal discussion given the number of projects in jeopardy. Second, we get to connect the data-driven dots with our smart city infrastructure theme. We'll show how we're using data and our open data environment to engage the public and make better decisions with the Gang Prevention Task Force and through our data-driven approach on transportation planning. And if Chief Garcia is here, he fully supports the use and publication of this data and the discussions we're about to have. And last but not least, we'll receive an update on our digital services strategy and our success in taking lessons from the United Kingdom and applying them to San Jose's digital services transformation journey. So to kick off today's updates, I'll turn the presentation over to Reggie Nair, the city's Smart City Manager.
Thank you, Dolan, and thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Mayor, members of the committee, and the public. My name is Reggie Nair, Smart City Manager for the Civic Innovation Team. Last month, we presented to the committee a total of 38 high-priority projects that were identified by city departments under each of the 7 themes that will be tracked and reported out to the committee on a monthly basis. This project list includes AccessHe Side and AV projects as per the recommendations made at the last February's meeting. So what you see before you is the latest status of the 38 high priority projects. The slide is prioritized list of projects from left to right, showing the highest priority project on the second left column next to the themes shown, to the lowest of the high priority projects on the right side of the slide. This is demonstrated on the arrow diagram shown below. We will refresh the roadmap every 6 months to include future projects that were identified in the initiating phase once it is fully scoped, budgeted, and staffed for execution. We have modified the red and green colors of the traffic light status used for reporting purposes on the Smart City Roadmap 2.0 so that it is more sensitive to those who are colorblind. So shown in the key on the bottom right side of the slide, the green color, the top, what's shown on the top, indicates that the project is on track. The yellow color, the color that's in the middle, indicates issues with schedule, budget, or scope with these high priority projects. And then the last color on the bottom, the red color, indicates that the project is at risk and corrective course of action is required. So based upon the status updates that you just saw in the roadmap shown in the previous slide, the bar graph shows a breakdown of each of the projects' status to date. So for the month of March, 18 projects, about 47% of the projects are in green status. 12 projects, about 32, is in yellow, and 8 projects about 21 is in need of corrective action. It is important to remember that innovation is hard, and the execution of these types of projects at scale is very complex because it not only includes technology improvements, but also process and people improvements as well to ensure sustainability. A combination of all 3 of these is essential and will further strengthen our approach towards innovation and truly be a smart city. The benefit of showing this level of transparency for status reporting is that it exactly shows what we want to see by highlighting where our strengths and weaknesses are. Also recognizing that there are areas that need more support and address them early enough by using an agile approach that will show us to make corrective course of actions as soon as possible. Since this is the first update for the month of March on the Smart City Roadmap 2.0, in the future for April, as you can see in the bar there, I will be showing future status updates with a bar diagram and compare, just so that we can show it for comparison on how we progress towards successful delivery of these projects. So each month, for the reporting status, we will provide more details for those projects that are at risk, the red status. And we want to be transparent about the issues. However, we also do want to share with you the resolutions approach that we will use to help these priority projects be successful. So in these next few slides, we'll highlight the 8 projects that are currently at risk. So the integrated permitting system, this project is 2 years behind schedule. And we have identified earlier on that one of the major issues with this project is the workflow to review permits that goes through siloed teams, both internally and externally, for implementation. Also, there is a lack of technology to help improve efficiencies with these teams. We presented this project to the committee last fall and shared an approach to help this project get back on track. The team is reprioritizing and rescoping the remaining portion of the contract and will present to the ad hoc committee in April 2019. Also, there has been a team reset, and new governance structure and operation model is already in place and has been implemented. A status update for this project will be provided to this committee in June 2019. My San Jose. This project required some additional time to establish a new governance and team structure and a shared vision. The RFP was anticipated to be delivered by Q4 of last year, but because of the challenges experienced with the procurement, it has been difficult to ascertain a schedule to advertise the RFP. Our resolution approach to keep this project moving forward is by focusing on the usability and back-end process improvements with the service teams. We will move forward to advertise an award before the end of this year. Our goal is to go live with the new My San Jose App 2.0 by Q2 of next year, 2020. Again, another status update for this project will be provided to the committee in June of 2019. So data strategy, one of our other big rocks. We have made 2 unsuccessful recruitments for a chief data officer, primarily due to the competitive market challenges. We are working with Fuse Corps to recruit an individual with more industry experience and expertise, and we do plan to have them on board by May of 2019. The IT Infrastructure Modernization. We did originally anticipate an award and execution of the contract by late 2018 with the goal to complete the implementation process by June of this year. The Civic Innovation Team will be working with Finance Department to develop a procurement and readiness program to help resolve the backlog of contracts and procurements in queue. Once the contract is finalized, the IT staff do plan to complete this project by March of 2019. The business tax system project, this one is put on hold for now, but in the interim, the Finance Department, in collaboration with IT, is focused on delivering the business tax amnesty project, which also provides another revenue stream for the city. The purpose of the business tax amnesty project, which is currently on green on the roadmap, will enhance the user's access through a limited functionality for an online system, but help staff on the back end with improvements to their processes. A new RFP will be developed by late of 2019 for the business tax system. The Advanced Cybersecurity RFP and Policy. Major issues in preventing this high priority project to progress was delays in the issuance of the RFP by 6 months, several iterations of the policy, up to 20 iterations, which has put the schedule behind schedule by 7 months, and then recruitment for specialized skills almost by 9 months. As stated before, the Civic Innovation Team will be working closely with Finance to make sure that we have a procurement and readiness program in place. Also, by March, IT, HR, OER, and Auditor's Office will establish an approach to finalizing a policy and address technical audit and personnel requirements. And last but not least, our AccessHe Side project. This project is 18 months behind schedule. This project is to include both the activation of the community Wi-Fi at James Lick attendance area and also the Wi-Fi installation at both Overfelt and Yerba Buena High School attendance areas. The estimated budget for the installation of those 2 attendance areas was nearly doubled due to not allocating permitting costs for design and construction support. We are in the process of conducting a technical and educational assessment of the Wi-Fi system at James Lick that's currently in place, installed. And we are working closely with Eastside Union High School Districts and SmartWave through a partnership with this city that the city has with the Silicon Valley Talent Partnership. And what the Silicon Valley Talent Partnership does is that it recruits outside private companies to volunteer their time in helping cities with their civic issues. And so through that, PayPal has volunteered to help assist the city with the technical and both the technical and the educational assessments. The technical assessment will include an evaluation of the usage and the connectivity or the uptime of the Wi-Fi system, And the second part that the PayPal team will be evaluating will be the educational outcomes, which we will work closely with Eastside Union and James Lick to deliver those, determine what those criteria is. The good news, what we found out, the amount of data that's being used, which is about 1 terabyte plus, is being transferred for about 8,000 users in this James Lick area. And it's more used than any other system that we have in place. So that what we have at the airport, the downtown area, and the convention center. So just to put things in perspective, these kids are using it, so it's fantastic. And so understanding
how they're using it?
that is yet to be determined. Yes.
Actually, we do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we do. So to clarify, we want to do a technical assessment to open it up because the opportunity cost of keeping this from 6,000 households was getting greater, and we've done over a year of study on the single channel so that we didn't get dirty data, which was the conversation we had at the last committee. The school district is able to provide information on what types of pages are being accessed, how long, and things like that. So, and also, this is the channel that has the Child Information Protection Act filters. So, so we know that they're not accessing bad things. We know what types of good things they're accessing without becoming too surveillant on their privacy. And for that reason, we felt comfortable opening it up to the rest of the surrounding 6,000 households. So those non-student households, the individuals in the city that don't have kids at all can still access it for free at home.
Thanks, Dolan. And so, as Dolan mentioned, we did move forward with a soft launch to opening up the community Wi-Fi, and so we'll continue to work with Silicon Valley Talent Partnership and PayPal to make sure assess the technical. We have over a year and a half worth of data to use, so we have some good information. So there's a huge thanks for Dolan, who made the call. Let's get it done, and Rob Lloyd and Ed Kim from IT, who are helping with this effort in collaboration with SmartWave, who is the contractor and installation company. And so moving forward, we'll present our findings with the Silicon Valley Talent Partnership and PayPal to Eastside Union and the James Lick attendance area so that they're aware, and then by June of this year. And then we'll also discuss next steps for Overfelt and Yerba Buena. So as you recall, we presented to the committee last month on how Small Wonder Projects allows a space for small experiments or emerging technologies that get us ready for the future. The Small Wonders are time-boxed and requires less staff time to deliver in comparison to our big rocks. So currently, right now, this is a snapshot of 9 projects that are executing. And we are working closely with the Mayor's Office of Technology and Innovation to refine the short list of potential Small Wonder projects for future, and have been starting that process and looking at our backlog. And then also we are going to work together to figure out how to better display this. So, so do want to keep you posted. But for right now, things are moving forward. So, and this concludes my portion of the presentation. So I'm going to pass it on to Dolan.
Thanks, Reggie. So we'll open it up for questions in a second, but I think the roadmap is doing what it should be doing, is it's pointing out status of projects and helping us determine some relative priorities. I think if I were sitting in your shoes, seeing 53% of the projects in red or yellow is probably not a positive outcome. To begin to address how those kind of break down, 4 of them are in a procurement backlog. 3 of them are what you would consider high complexity projects. If we go back to the the roadmap for a second. And these, as we refine this process, since this is really our first update, we'll get better at reading the data and telling you what it sees. But if you look at user-friendly government, all of those applications up there that are yellow or red, or the strategies, span multiple departments, span multiple stakeholders, have very complex interfaces. And what we're finding is in that area, our capability is still really mature. Really immature, right? So if you look at the technology roadmap of immaturity to maturity, from a capability model of 0 to a capability model of 5. Rob's done a great job at getting brilliant at the basics. This isn't the brilliant at the basics. This is the complex systems integration work. And so I think that one of the things we'll be learning is are we going to be able to make investments as we go through the budget discussion? Are we going to be able to make investments to improve our capability maturity in delivering these complex projects? Or are we going to use this as a tool for prioritization? And some of these projects may have to be deprioritized or put on hold, so we do less but do it better. So kind of with that framing of the conversation, the questions we expect, I'll turn it back to the chair for questions and answers.
We'll go ahead and go to public comment. Call your name. Please come on down. Mr. Victor Sin and Blair Beekman.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council members. My name is Victor Sin. I'm a resident of San Jose and also the chair of the Santa Clara Valley chapter of the ACLU of Northern California. So on this file, page 7, okay, as Dolan just explained, I have one specific question, okay, about the privacy strategy, and in particular, okay, why, okay, it is in yellow color. So in addition, okay, to the complexity, okay, and also the fact that, okay, this project, okay, spans multiple departments, I would like to know whether there are any other specific issues that cause, okay, privacy strategy to be yellow in color. Even though, okay, I may have some insight, okay, as a member of the Privacy Advisory Task Force, I would like to hear a reply in public. Thank you.
Hello. I was very interested in the words spoken by Dolan Beckel at the beginning that you were working on the LED light program as community parks, libraries, that is on your radar right now. I feel that too. I felt that that wasn't going to be organized and prioritized until this June. And it was my feeling that what's going on right now is, you know, I used the word dribs and drabs before, that, you know, there's bits and pieces of the LED projects that are going to be going in throughout the city as you see fit until the report comes out in June. And I really want to work on a way that it can be a public announcement almost, that you can say that to the public and you can create a memo process. And I hope we're at the stage that you can learn how to do that better. I don't know exactly what that means, but that it's okay to say it. And it's okay to say that we're going to only, you know, do a bit of technology at this time. You have a way to hide the issue and make it, you know, confused and nobody's really quite sure what's where. And I just think it's okay to just simply say we're going to be doing some technology at this time and with a big report coming out in June. And it's that kind of clarity that's needed for the future of our technology process. And we have old bad habits that I hope we're learning how to work through. And if you have the right people who know how to talk to you about this, I think there can be a good level of dialogue and communication about it. I may not be that person to do that. I don't have the depth and experience, but I think I'm speaking to something that you can do if you really work at it. Thank you.
Before we go to questions from the dais, does the staff have any response to the first speaker?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yep. Kip Harkness, Deputy City Manager. I wanted to give a respectful public answer to the gentleman from the ACLU. So first of all, the yellow indicates some issues with, in this case, with schedule. We had a path forward to have privacy principles and then work on specific use cases. Our original schedule that we put forward to you said we'd be working on use cases right now. We're still at the principles stage, so it means that we've taken longer to work through those principles than we anticipated. And that's really two reasons. One, we wanted to make sure that we have engagement. In our initial attempts at engagement, we want to draw a bit broader net than we've been able to capture in the conversation, make sure we hear more voices. And so that'll take a little bit longer. And then two, some of the key people leading this were either on a combination of paternity leave or being pulled partly to make sure that our small cell permitting was continuing to move along. So we haven't put this as high a level of resourcing into it as we have. We don't see any issues that will take this to red, but we did want to acknowledge that we haven't gotten to the deeper use case work that our initial posted schedule said. So we think we're on track. And in fact, we think that the deep collaboration of the ACLU and others has given us really good feedback on those privacy principles and that we're in pretty solid shape with those. But wanted to acknowledge the fact that we weren't where we said we were going to be.
And putting my director's hat on, we are having a budget conversation about what it might take to get us back on track for this. And just want to make sure you're aware that we're trying to get that back to green.
Okay. All right, Councilmember Jimenez.
Thank you. I just had a quick question about the diagram that's on the, or the roadmap that's on the screen. Oftentimes we access some of this on our tablets and such, and so it looks a little different. I think the order's a little different, but more importantly, it seems on what I had, maybe I have an older version, IT infrastructure is yellow on mine. I think on here it's red, and then my San Jose is yellow on mine, and on here it's red. And I'm just curious about the changes. Was there some developments prior to coming to the meeting, or?
Yeah, I'll take the hit for that. So we had a in-depth discussion on the IT infrastructure modernization in my San Jose on Tuesday. We needed to push these out Monday night. So we pushed them out, we had the conversation, and we felt having accurate and timely data for the committee was more important. We're going to be changing our cadence to make sure that we push any changes out Monday night that reflect and don't change so the committee or the public don't do something different. But it is an accurate representation that my San Jose is red because of the procurement backlog, and the IT infrastructure modernization is red because of the procurement backlog.
Okay, thank you. I was just curious. Just wanted to better understand because, as you know, I'm still new, so especially this committee.
Yeah, we're 0 for 2 in having our onboarding meeting,
yeah.
Councilmember
So
Jimenez.
we're going to be meeting, so I suspect some of the questions I have are going to go away, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
Councilmember Davis.
Thank you. Okay, we've talked about you've mentioned the procurement backlog a couple of times. I cannot say that word, procurement backlog. Can you talk a little bit about that and whether that has kind of daylighted an issue that we maybe didn't know about or we knew about and now is ripe for some change?
Yeah, I'll take a first cut at that, and I believe Lisa's in the audience as well. So, do you, Lisa? Okay, thank you. I mean, I think the short answer is right now the procurement challenge is just throughput, and the issue is there's a war on talent, and San Jose is losing it. We cannot keep we're losing resources out of our procurement team faster than we can acquire and train them. And so we are looking at, first of all, focusing on throughput. And some of the focusing on throughput is looking at opportunities where resources can't be necessarily recruited away at a 25 to 30% salary increase, and that would be engaging companies, consultants that actually do procurements. There are companies that I won't mention that actually that's what they do is local, state, federal government outsource procurements. And so there are resources that we can contract and keep under a form of retention that would help get through that procurement backlog while we're looking at doing salary studies and ways that we can be more competitive in the market. And then we'll be moving on to some more process improvements, training, and things like that. But right now, it's a war. There's a war for talent, and we're losing it.
And the only thing I'd add is that it is also, as we mentioned briefly last time, it's three factors that are different than they were even a couple of years ago. We have a vastly greater number of IT procurements. They are bigger dollar amounts, and they are more complex because we want to move to a more agile method of doing many of these. So those three together just exacerbates the talent problem. And so we know also we need to think differently about not only how we're able to support the talent that we have, but what processes they use, looking at things like what are the minimum levels where we go out for a more complex RFP and things like that, and how do we prioritize among all of those projects so that we don't just have a whoever is barking loudest from the 17th floor wins kind of mentality. So there's a lot to it, and the good news is the finance department is deeply engaged collaboratively with us in a way we hope is supportive of their leadership, but it is very significant and it will require time, effort, and resources.
Is the talent issue related only to salary, or are there processes in pure procurement that we are not using that are compelling to people in that field that make them want to jump?
I think at this point I asked Lisa Tightno, the finance deputy director, to come down. While she is coming down, I'll use the opportunity to show how the roadmap works. So recognizing that there was a crisis and we have 61 procurements in backlog, we stepped up and we're deprioritizing some of our IoT work to have our IoT lead actually work with procurement to on recruiting and building that backlog and maybe coming up with a better prioritization scheme so higher priority projects get through faster. And so the way the roadmap's going to work is you're going to see a procurement readiness program pop up on the roadmap, and you're going to see the IoT reference architecture probably move from yellow to red to on hold, and that's the only way we can prioritize because resources in my team, I don't have anybody left.
Right, resources are scarce. And if you remember the last time we were here in front of the committee, we had a presentation that showed that the demand for the services, procurement services, were far exceeding our current staffing levels. What we've tried to put together, in addition to the consultant option, is also increasing staff at in certain tiers, such that as the tiers get approved, then we'll be able to add additional services. So you can approve tier 1 or tier 2 or tier 3, and that will give us feedback as to how fast we can work on that backlog and the demand for our services.
Okay. The question that I had asked was about whether losing the talent competition was only because of salaries, or whether there are process improvements that we haven't put in place yet that are compelling in other cities or other jurisdictions that are taking our talent away.
We do have talent going to other organizations. We've not been able to initiate a salary survey that would tell us definitively if that's one of the contributors. They are leaving, though. One of the things we think might be contributing to it is also the workload. So we're looking into salary surveys with HR.
Do we have exit interviews when people leave?
Not consistently, so we need to incorporate that into it. The ones that we do have, that's why I did say that workload was part of the issue. People are getting what I would call offers that they can't pass up. Those opportunities are being offered to our employees as well.
Thank you.
Mayor Liccardo.
Thank you. Appreciate the challenges you're wrestling with here. Could we go to the slide where it refers to, I think it had to do with something along the lines of 20 reviews citywide. Gosh, I'm trying to remember.
Yeah,
20 cycles of review.
Rob, if you could.
What are we doing to ourselves, Rob?
So when we talk about cybersecurity policy and what the rules are, we get lots of feedback from departments that would like rules to be a little bit different. And so it's been a process of managing a policy by group hug. And so instead, we've actually sat down with OER and with Assistant City Manager Jennifer McGuire, said there really should be a policy analyst and a set process to form this. And that's what you see in the last bullet item, is we agreed that a designee from OER is going to actually coach this process all the way through, say here's what the audits have said we have to include, here's what IT is pushing for as good process, here's what OER likes to see in a very readable version of a policy. But yeah, this has made a couple of us say, I never want to do policy again. but it's essential.
Were you one of those people?
And we have a path to completion now.
And if I could add, I think this is some of the tension, Rob's the first time we've had a CIO rather than just an IT director. And the difference in my mind is really some of the governance citywide. We have had a strong decentralized structure based on that's how people could fund these things. And so there's a lot of ownership at the department level, which can be positive. But in cybersecurity, that's one of those things that just has to be consistent across the board.
Yeah.
You don't kind of have an option on that. And so we're kind of learning the hard way that there are some things where it's not really, you don't have a departmental veto. And so I think this is, Rob has brought people along with it, and we've been a little bit tougher now in the end to say it's, you know, not everybody's going to agree. It is going to be this way.
Right. Okay. I appreciate those challenges. Thanks, Rob. As we think about the small wonders, I recognize we're going to see a refresh in the fall. Is that right? With potential new projects?
For the small wonders, every 3 months.
I'm sorry, how many?
Every 3 months.
3, okay, thank you. And I know that a lot of this is a function of what gets pushed to us. But with the Unleash Your Geek program, you know, we were trying to engage in a poll, right? And in that context, we know we're not, the pitch isn't necessarily to a bunch of venture-funded tech companies or startups, but it's often just community members or college students or whoever, and that's great. That's the thing we want to do. And I'm just wondering, if we were to employ that approach with some of the more sophisticated companies, and departments were to articulate, these are the 3 or 4 issues we really want, problems that we want someone to solve. And we just said, hey, companies, these are the 3 or 4, so don't waste our time with this other stuff, just solve these problems. Does that help us either spend our time better on small wonders or actually get more over the goal line?
Sir, that's music to my ears. So that is exactly what we're doing with those startup and residence projects. These 4 projects have been identified based on what the department's needs are, or what through an auditor's report. These 4 projects, these were the 4 brave souls that basically started this process in going through. And just a little bit more detail about that program, for the first 6 months, they basically had to come up with the idea, develop an RFP, and then with the RFP, it actually is an opportunity for the startup to show proof of concept, and if it is a viable product to the project manager, they can go into a contract a year later. So it's kind of using our procurement requirements. How do we make sure not just do a demo, but really get into an actual contract with a startup? So the focus is a startup, but we can definitely open it up to larger, firms who are interested in solving our civic issues.
Right.
Yeah, and Mayor, what the bomb I haven't unleashed on Reggie yet is, so Shireen and I have been talking about this. We kind of want to do a walk before we could run. We wanted to see how STIR works out. We also, with my director hat on, we're having a budget conversation about a small wonders project manager to assist with this. And I think once we get to that next level of maturity, we probably do a challenge between the private sector and the departments, and widen that funnel of incoming projects to be a little more community problem, community service benefit focused, as opposed to the tech sector, doing tech for technology's sake.
Right. Okay, that's helpful. And, I think if we had the bandwidth, hey, we'd love to do those tech for technology's sake projects too, but I understand we're not there. And then can we go back to the Eastside, AccessHe Side slide? First, thank you in getting this launched. I mean, 6,000 families now have access they didn't have before, and that's really significant, since I know our goal was, with our digital inclusion fund, was to get to 50,000 people who were on the wrong side of the divide, and we just took a big bite out of that. That's really significant. Given the fact we do have a fund now, my sense was, from being from the outside of these negotiations, not in the room, that an awful lot of this was sort of a discussion around money and who would fund what. Now that we have a fund up and running, does that help this conversation at all?
Yeah, I don't mean to cut you off. I
Yeah,
think the
no.
answer is yes. I think there's two dimensions to that. One is I think there's still a conversation to have with Superintendent Chris Funk and the school board about the next steps.
Okay.
Where we last left that conversation was that the whole premise was based on opening it up to the students and the non-student households. So that and we wanted to get the educational assessment, so we were comfortable moving on. All of those things are converging together. So I think our next step, which we can talk about on the March 18th briefing we're having on this topic, will be once we get the educational assessment to sit down with the school district and understand where they are with their funding of their Measure I bond, for technology bond for this. Then, yeah, I think the second step is the advisory board of the Digital Inclusion Fund certainly can entertain an option from anyone, including CETF, if grants on the infrastructure side to promote Wi-Fi are something we want to pursue in our first round or our second round or the nth round of funding. So that's a long answer to yes.
Yeah. And does their E-bond fund anything other than capital? Can they ever fund ongoing expenses to? Yeah,
that was one of the innovative things about the school district bond is they could fund OpEx and CapEx.
Good.
That was part of the confusion because we thought that they were funding OpEx and the district said we don't want to fund OpEx. We think this is part of a larger community Wi-Fi, and those are some of those communication gaps we need to work through at the next meeting with the district.
Okay. If I can help at all in either convening the meeting or being a participant anyway, happy to talk to Chris, however way.
We'll be talking to you in 11 days.
Okay, great. Perfect. Wonderful. And then, yeah, and is there a reason why this is not a big rock instead of a small wonder? Because as we think about our strategy, this could be a really big deal if we roll this out successfully.
So AccessHe Side is a big rock. Is that?
Oh, it is?
It is a big rock, yeah.
I thought I saw it on the small wonder list.
That's the educational assessment,
Oh.
sorry, yeah. So, for free, which is great. So for free, Silicon Valley Talent Partnership has engaged a lot of smart people at PayPal, along with the library, Jill Bourne at the library, along with the school district, and Cisco came along for a ride, and Rob Lloyd from IT. So we've got a pretty strong team that are going to look at this data and come to a very solid conclusion, and that will eliminate a lot of the questions we've always had about wanting to have an educational, which is what council directed us to do, is come back with educational outcomes before we move on to Yerba Buena and Overfelt.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. My questions have been asked, so go ahead and go on to the next item. Thanks.
Great. So if we could have D2 team come on down.
All right, Councilmember Jimenez has a question.
Dolan, just a quick question. The folks for the AccessHe Side, how are those 6,000 folks being notified that it's available in their area? And I apologize, certainly maybe this is something that's been expressed already, but I'm very curious.
I think it's a good question. So one of the decisions that I made, and I'll take the heat, was to get it opened up and then move on to the communications and marketing of it. As soon as we started talking about communications and marketing, we were talking about weeks delayed. So we're going to open it up. Hopefully it'll be open Friday. Then the next step is to engage the district and the mayor's communications director and Rosario on how we do message this. I do know that the principal at James Lick is already working on how he's going to message, to the neighborhoods through having his students and parents tell other students and parents in the area. So there's some things that are taking place already, but we're definitely want to do that. Everyone wants to do it. We just wanted to get it opened up first because we've been delayed so long.
Okay, thank you.
And certainly, I guess, if you guys can help, so we'll be happy to engage you and especially District 3, 5, and 7 on how they can help communicate to the surrounding community that this is available.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 2. So one of the projects on our roadmap that you just looked at is the city open data environment. And think of this environment as a virtual library. I know that Jill Bourne may take comment to that, but think of the open data environment as a virtual library where the city can store data, develop patterns and insights, and enable staff to translate those insights into actionable community benefit. We're going to explore both better engagement with the public and better decisions by staff by first explaining our open data environment. This understanding of the environment, it's a little technical, so some eyes may glaze over, but then you kind of understand the concept of where these data stories and engaging the public fits in. So once that context has been set, we're going to do 2 demonstrations of what might be scaled around public engagement and better decision making. And with that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Rob Lloyd.
Good afternoon, Committee Chair, Mayor, committee members, and members of the public. Rob Lloyd, Chief Information Officer for the City of San Jose. Today, excuse me, I'm here with Artie Tangri, our data architect, Avi Otam, our division manager for Parks, Recreation, and Neighborhood Services, Albert Kihami, our Stanford Fellow for PRNS, as well as Jill North, our Technology and Innovation Program Manager for Department of Transportation, along with our great vendor partner from Urban Logic, which is Mark Masongsong. So in terms of bringing you something today, we're very happy to bring this item because it's the culmination of about 1.5 years worth of work, setting the foundations. So you'll see today the progress and state of those foundations, the applications of data and analytics to meaningful community questions and challenges so that we can get to better decisions and better engagement. We'll also see and have room to discuss where do we go from here. Oh, thank you. Sorry. So one of the things that is important to note, as Dolan kind of brought up earlier, was the importance of data to the San Jose Smart City vision. And when Council approved this in 2016, to its credit, it recognized the role and the central role of data to the Smart Cities initiatives that we had in front of us. So data is central to Internet of Things, to smart solutions, to predictive modeling, to autonomous vehicles, to artificial intelligence. All of those pieces come through this conduit. And along with that is that track of getting to a smart cities journey where we can access citywide quality data that we have and can develop the patterns and insights by skilled people so that we can make the better decisions and better actions and then get to prediction and automation. Truly, data is that medium, and today you're going to see the start of what's possible as we continue on this journey. One of the important things to note is why this matters so much and how this is a critical juncture in our smart cities journey because of the scale, an unprecedented data scale, and unprecedented data diversity that we're seeing. We are traveling roughly 5 to 6 years worth of maturity in the space of about 1.5 to get to a point of readiness that lets us move forward. In terms of data diversity, I do want to just take one quick moment to say, what does that mean? In the past, data was really characters and numbers in tables. Today we have audio, we have video, we have geospatial elements, we have telemetry that's constantly streaming. And that's a very big and different data environment. Also, instead of just computers and servers, and on top of mobile, you're now going to have millions of sensors that are going to be at our fingertips that we not only have to be able to read and digest and get patterns from, but then be able to push direction and control back through. So it's a very different environment that we see in front of us. Now with all things that you hear and from us on this Smart Cities journey, everything does boil down to people, technology, and processes. And that is the theme that you're going to see in the presentation today is the technology that we've been working on is hard, but it's actually the easy part, right? So we're going to design a great architecture that can hit a lot of the important design features that are going to carry us forward. We're going to prepare that environment so that we can handle IoT scale and artificial intelligence. But then it comes back to the people. And are we building up the skills and the abilities in the organization that we can create new meaning through that data for better decisions and more automation? A lot of that comes through practice. One of the other themes that you'll see through this presentation is the sheer importance of processes. And so instead of talking in terms of data, engaging with the community around questions that are meaningful to it. Around data governance, what can we agree to? How are we going to structure information so that it breaks the silos? And when we have decision making, how can we make sure that the quality is there, that it's consistent, and we can dive into how those decisions are made if there needs to be some improvement in that approach?
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, just, Rob, could you tell me what ML and DL stands for?
Sorry, we'll get into that later, but artificial intelligence, it's machine learning and deep learning.
Oh, deep learning, got it. Okay, got it. Thanks.
And with that, Artie Tangri is going to talk about those data foundations.
Good afternoon, Chair, Mayor, Council members, and members of the public. I'm Arti Tangri. I'm the data architect with City's IT department. I would like to get a little deeper into some of the foundation work we've been doing. Beginning with the city's Open Data Community Architecture, or ODCA as we've been calling it, it is the base of our foundation. ODCA has been designed to provide the city with a data environment that is highly adaptable, secure, and scalable. It provides an approach to a complete data management, which we've split into two broad categories: data storage or infrastructure and data consumption. With the data infrastructure, we intend to provide a big data environment that helps bring data together from siloed systems in a secure manner, support real-time data, and provide the ability to scale with increasing data volume. For data consumption, the focus is on enabling use of data in a way that helps improve efficiency and better engage through data by means of data portal, data stories, and advanced analytics. The goal of all of this is to create an integrated data platform that streamlines city's data flow by providing a mechanism for data aggregation, data sharing, and data analytics, thus leading up to predictive analytics and eventually helping facilitate learn through data by making multi-use data easily accessible to city employees. City Open Data Environment, or CODE, is a phased implementation of our Open Data Community Architecture. Here is a simplified form of our architecture. The first piece in the architecture is the hardware that we're purchasing as part of the infrastructure refresh to not only replace our existing hardware, but to also build our new data environment. Next comes the software, which is a big data application that we built as part of a pilot in 2017. We are currently in the process of making enhancements to the application to make it more secure, enable it to work with the cloud infrastructure, and containerize it so as to make it easily deployable. This forms the new data lake environment, or the city open data environment. The data lake environment on the new hardware makes the tool piece of our data approach, which is mainly targeted to the city employees who will be either managing the open data environment or working with the data on a daily basis. The next piece in the architecture is the data portal. The data portal can pull data from the city's data lake environment or directly from city systems. It allows for data sharing in the form of open data or private data sharing between the city and the vendors or within city departments. The data portal, being the front end of communication, allows the city to communicate using data with public or with focus groups. This makes up the process piece of our data approach. And lastly, we have the data science and advanced analytic tools that will work off the open data environment, which makes the data much more powerful by means of machine learning and artificial intelligence, thus allowing the city to do predictive analytics. However, this is a part that cannot begin till we have all of the previous work completed, and there is a lot more investment that needs to go in to allow for advanced analytics in terms of staffing and tools. Here's a quick update on where we are on some of the initiatives with the foundational work. We published the Open Data Community Architecture as an open source document after doing a proof of concept on it. We're looking to partner with universities and nonprofits to help build data stories for better community engagement. The procurement for our data and transparency portal to consolidate our open data portal and financial transparency portal to one has been completed. The implementation of the new portal is starting soon. We have 3 data stories in progress for engagement through data. For the first one, we've partnered with Urban Logic for the transportation data story that you'll be hearing about today. And we are in our initial discussions with the fire department and the housing department for 2 other data stories. And lastly, we have an RFQ in the process for containerizing, securing, and cloud enabling the city open data environment. With all the foundational work on the city open data environment, we're essentially building an empty library that needs to be stocked and managed.
And all of that is just to say that we've laid the foundation and created the technical elements. We've created the partnerships to start this journey to create and achieve a data-driven city. To carry the analogy a bit further is we have built the library, now we're looking to fill it, and we're experimenting on ways to engage through it. And there are a lot of foundational elements, but really what we're about is to make sure that when we build this, that we can support the scale that we see, that we can actually break down the silos of the city so things are accessible and we can create those smart solutions, that we can share internally with partners, even with vendors, as the city's needs say we do. We also want to narrow and build the essential skills so we can create that community of practice around specific tools and data access so that people in the city can start collaborating on these data initiatives. There is a support to the mass required for artificial intelligence. So in terms of the question about machine learning and deep learning, they're only possible when there's lots of quality data to traverse through. And that doesn't exist in a consistent manner in the city right now. And if we don't take this moment in time to start assembling that, the city will not be positioned to do that in the future. We also see the ability and need to have the ability to create better security and privacy in this model and to be a leader in this space nationally. And just a quick note on that is in the Smart Cities and Civic Innovation Group, there are opportunities we turn down because the security and privacy pieces don't appear to be there. And so we, as a city heading forward, need to make sure that we build these things in mind so when those initiatives come up, we can say yes more often. And last, the processes to put in place for the essential data governance. And that is one thing that we see as prolifically as missing in the city that we're going to have to resolve over time. But we also have a confession to make, and that is in community engagement through data, the last 10, 11 years in civic tech, gov tech, all of us have been pushing out data layers and saying, wow, aren't we engaging? And unfortunately, it actually goes in the reverse order, right? Pushing data out to the community actually appeals to a very small portion of our population. Not that many people dive into raw data for fun. So we actually want to switch the script and actually start with the story or challenge that's important to the community, get the data to build an answer and an understanding of the context, and then write the short articles that actually make sense and are appealing to the community in a way that is engaging. So instead of pushing data and kind of pushing against a rope, let's go ahead and say, here's the idea and concept, enlighten the way, and then build those conversations from there. And that's actually part of how we're going to switch our work and what you'll see in the next two items. To put a finer point on it, we are going from data stories as the center point to appeal to people. And below that or above that is a data article where we say there's a process to this where there's some data journalism and some clarity that we want to be able to talk with the community in clear terms. And only at its base, and with that roughly 1% or 0.5% of the population that loves raw data, then we'll go into that, but it'll be accessible to our partners and to our departments to really dive in when they need to. But this is going to be kind of the fulcrum of our data engagement heading forward. And with that, Avio Tom will introduce the work of PRNS and Albert Kehami.
Thank you, Rob. Chair, Mayor, members of the committee. I'm Avio Tom, Division Manager in Parks, Recreation, and Neighborhood Services. As Rob said, to become a data-driven city, we need people, technology, and processes. And because we are powered by people, that starts with people who champion the use of data and have the skills to put passion into practice. The City Council and the community may know PRNS as the Department of Fun, but we've also championed the collection and use of data for many, many years. And we could go through a litany of examples, but I'll just name a couple. Almost exactly 2 years ago, we presented to this committee our innovative use of Power BI to create FMS budget management dashboards. And just next week at the Neighborhood Services and Education Committee, we'll be presenting a few service improvements that we have created using our business intelligence system for tracking park maintenance activities. We've done this without dedicated IT staffing because we see the absolute value in data-driven decision-making. Without dedicated IT staffing, we've had to be creative in how to get the right people. In 2017, PRNS began collaborating with Stanford University's Haas Center for Public Service to host Community Impact Fellows, who are recent graduates who commit to a 10-month fellowship in the public sector. These fellowships enable us to tackle meaningful projects that may be out of the reach of our day-to-day operations and simultaneously create a pipeline of talented and passionate public servants and future leaders. Last spring, when we were considering potential projects, Mario Maciel, our Division Manager for Youth Intervention Services, and CJ Ryan, our Strategic Partnerships Program Manager, asked how might we enrich our grant-making processes with even more data. We wanted to put our programs under the microscope and apply analytical techniques such as risk terrain modeling to provide another data-driven perspective on how we allocate limited funds. That brings me to today, where we have the privilege of sharing some of the work of one of our Stanford Community Impact Fellows, Albert Gahami, who has created a prototype risk map that will be included in our upcoming hotspot exercises. Albert joined our team last July after graduating from Stanford with a bachelor's in economics and a master's in public policy. He is passionate about improving outcomes for our youth and the community. He created a startup in the music industry. In his own words, the statistical software tool R is his jam. I'm not sure, but I think that's a musical joke. Without further ado, I drop onto you, Albert.
Thank you, Avi. Chair, Mayor, council members, members of the public, thank you so much for giving me the time to talk to you about the work that I and PRNS are doing to identify the risks of gang and youth violence throughout our city. This is a two-step process of first evaluating where in the city we have the highest risks of gang and youth violence, and then taking that data, how do we predict where those risk factors are going to be in the future? This involves first defining our metrics. What does it mean to have a high risk of gang and youth violence? Once we've defined those, we can find the data that matches those metrics, combine all that data together to ultimately learn from that data. So let's start by defining our metrics. The Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention from the U.S. Department of Justice is the standard for risk factors in gang and youth violence. They list the risk factors in communities as things such as poverty, victimization of violence throughout the community, illegal firearms, child abuse, the presence of gang crime within the community, and substance abuse. Once we have these metrics defined, our job is to figure out what data matches those metrics. Our data comes from the cooperation of the San Jose Police Department. They have provided us crime reports for the last 5 years to be able to analyze where substance abuse, violence, and other things are happening throughout the city. We have census data giving us educational and economic information for each neighborhood throughout the city, along with school violence data provided to us from the Safe School Campus Initiative from the Mayor's Gang Prevention Task Force, and many other sources to create a scorecard of past, present, and future risk for gang and youth violence in the city. The next step is to combine the data. And this is where the wonderful data library that Rob has talked about would come in. But since we don't have dedicated IT staffing in PRNS, we don't have that right now. So instead, I had to build my own data bookshelf.
By the way, the budget hearings will begin in a few weeks. So
Perfect. Good,
yeah,
good to know. So let me tell you about what we did with this data bookshelf to learn from our data. What you see here is a map of the city of San Jose divided into its neighborhoods, with each neighborhood ranked from low risk to high risk for gang and youth violence. Within each neighborhood, you can get an idea of not only its overall risk, but what metrics give it that risk level. These include the things that we talked about, like gang-affiliated crime, child maltreatment, violent victimization, presence of illegal firearms, economic deprivation, and substance abuse. This allows us to not only see the overall risk of gang and youth violence, but understand why we get that risk. And this level of nuance gives us an opportunity to explore other neighborhoods, like, for example, this one, that might have a low overall need rating, but we can see that they have a high substance abuse risk level. And that allows us to provide targeted resources to that specific neighborhood. Not only does this work allow us to better allocate our resources within the Mayor's Gang Prevention Task Force, but it allows us to ground our anecdotes in data. there's something really incredible and something that I love that happens when you combine data with the stories and voices of the people. The voices and the community allow to fill in the gaps and provide the details that you would never be able to get from your data. And your data allows you to ground that in a holistic, objective idea of what's happening. And putting those together, we're able to build the case for grants when we're applying to things outside of the city, which is something that we're doing in certain parts of the Mayor's Gang Prevention Task Force. So that's the evaluation portion of our work. Let's talk about the predictions. And this is where that idea of machine learning, of artificial intelligence, of data science come into play. But really what all these are is just bringing form to our data. And let me show you what I mean by that. This is that same map that I showed you, except for the year 2013. This is that map in 2014, 2015, 16, 17. And as you can see, we start to get an idea of what the trends are in our data and how things are changing and staying the same over time, which allows us to go beyond 2018 to look at predictions for 2019, for 2020, and 2021. And based on comparing our predictions to historical data, we believe these predictions to be roughly 99% accurate. This and this fun stuff is the data science machine learning portion of our open data community architecture. But note that it is the last step of what is a robust open data community architecture. And this type of work, if we had the data, we could do so much more. There are so many other dashboards and projects and predictive analyses and evaluative analyses that I've been working on, but we simply don't have the time to complete. And that is because all of this work, this machine learning, data visualization work, has been about 1 month of my 7-month fellowship. Data formatting and just getting it in a usable format is been 6 months, the vast, vast majority of my time here. What if we did better? And this is where Artie and Rob, when they came to me and explained the idea of the open data community architecture, I was so excited. It's the idea of putting together all of our data, cleaned, primed, and ready to go for people, some would say an overeager data scientists, to go in and analyze what's going on in our city. The type of work that we've done, this predictive analytics in-house within the Department of Parks, Rec, and Neighborhood Services, makes us one of, if not the most, data innovative departments. And I realize that Department of Transportation is about to have something to say about that, but that's okay. I'm ready to argue. And the fact is that when we put our stuff together and combine our efforts, we could most certainly become one of, if not the most, data innovative cities. So what would that take? The short answer is a lot. But just from my experience here, 2 major things that would help are standardization of naming conventions, making sure that our data and files are simply named properly and consistently, and that the data within those files are named consistently. And a strong data governance, allowing us to quickly and effectively navigate the privacy issues that we're still struggling with today. And doing all of this can allow us to reach that data innovative, smart city vision that we are looking for. Thank you. And now I would like to pass it off to Jill, who will talk about what Department of Transportation is doing.
Thank you, Albert. Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Mayor, members of the committee, and members of the public. My name is Jill North, and I'm the Innovation Program Manager for the Department of Transportation, and I'm excited to share with you today our data story in regards to our partnership with Urban Logic and how the Department of Transportation has begun the process of unlocking our trapped data to prepare for the data needs for tomorrow. For decades, transportation planners, engineers, and analysts have all shared a fundamental challenge in that the data they have available to study and to make critical transportation decisions have been limited, expensive, and in the case of transportation network companies like Uber and Lyft, inaccessible. Currently, transportation and mobility are on the cusp of a transformation within the industry. And although new technology such as autonomous vehicles, Internet of Things, and e-scooters are exciting and offer new efficiencies and options for our residents, these innovations also offer new challenges in order to fully take advantage of the new tools and insights for our teams to consider when planning our transportation network. At the November 2018 Smart Cities and Service Improvements Committee meeting, Wilson Tam from DOT presented on the underlying data challenge facing our department when planning the future transportation ecosystem for San Jose. At that time, DOT had partnered with Urban Logic to help us unlock the power of our own data while building the foundation to support the data needs of tomorrow. Following only 3 months of active partnership and engagement, Urban Logic delivered a customized and fully functional platform to DOT in December of 2018. This tool replaced the time-consuming data entry practice and enabled DOT staff to have meaningful engagement with our communities about transportation in a visual and data-driven way. I am pleased to introduce to you the Urban Logic team who have joined us today from Canada and have solved a decades-long transportation problem for our department. In the audience, we have Herman Chandy and Julian Rafour, and next to me is Mark Masongsong, who will walk you through the power of compounding data to drive better decisions and some considerations going forward using data as a basis of community engagement. Mark.
Thank you so much, Jill, and to the mayor, chair, and council and public for the honor of being able to present some of the exciting work we've been able to do with your team here in San Jose. As a background, we're working on a number of different insights that you can derive from San Jose's data, and not just San Jose's data, but other government jurisdictions in the private sector. But for the purpose of today, we wanted to focus in on one specific use case. From the very beginning, it was made very clear to us that an overriding priority for the city of San Jose is to reduce traffic deaths to zero. So one of the things that we've been working on is analyzing data on how you can provide actionable intelligence to reduce the volume and severity of crashes and pedestrian fatalities in San Jose. So kind of on a background, what we've done over the last few months is we've analyzed about tens of thousands of crashes that happened in San Jose over a period of several years, and then we layered different data sets on top of that. So everything from the road design, the built environment, the density and types of businesses and buildings. And using machine and deep learning, what we do is we try to derive, what we call the anatomy of an accident. What are the factors that drive not just the number of accidents, but the severity of accidents? So for example, it's good news, but 89% of the accidents we studied did not result in injury. However, of the accidents that do cause injuries, about half of them are either fatal or severe. So that's one of these things that we were looking at, which is, can we hone in on what makes certain intersections more dangerous and more fatal than others? And so, for example, one of these things that you're looking at here is road design. Is it a signalized intersection? Does speed play a factor? Is it protected turn lanes or what have you? Even the curvature of a road. These are the types of elements, and when we looked at it, you can see that. So basically, to best understand this, a score of one would mean that this particular element of an intersection has 100% impact on causing severity of accidents. So it's clear that the design of roads and infrastructure does cause a degree of severity. The next thing Julian, our chief data scientist, did was he started to look at not just the road, but what about things that surround the road, the buildings, the businesses, the demographics, et cetera. How much do those play in terms of severity of accidents as opposed to the road itself? And as you can see, we were, I think quite taken aback that it's actually not necessarily the road that's the biggest impact, but how big the buildings are, what types of people, like is it residential or commercial, and if it's commercial, what types of businesses. These types of things started to weigh much more heavily. And as you combine the factors and analyze also on top of that the volume of accidents, you start to get much more predictive power that you could put in the hands of city staff to give them actionable insights around here are the certain things that perhaps you want to look at in terms of your long-range infrastructure planning or community planning that could have, with a high degree of confidence, a major impact in reducing severities of injuries and fatalities. So the next step after this is, of course, to empower city staff, because one of the things that we hold as quite an article of truth within our team is that we are not, and we never pretend to be the experts. It's been a great experience working with San Jose Department of Transportation staff because the depth of knowledge and the clarity of their thinking, they are experts in the community. I think the challenge is that they never had the data to harness their own expertise. So what we did was we built a platform that allows city staff to analyze in space and time the impacts of accidents. So is there a particular area that we want to look at where on a given time of day, there's a disproportion of accidents that are fatal or severe, and they're disproportionately rear enders, for example. And that way you can identify and micro-target specific interventions and limit the amount of investment in given resource constraints to maximize the impact on public safety. One of the other things that we are also aware of is that what most of those things we're talking about were using city-owned data. As Jill mentioned, one of these things we're working on with the Department of Transportation is to future-proof the platform. So this is a particular deployment we rolled out in another city, but we're importing this technology into the San Jose platform where you can use privacy-protected telecom data to understand a regional sense of traffic patterns. So for example, what impact does on a San Jose Sharks game people coming from San Francisco come? Like those are the sorts of things where San Jose's existing traffic network can actually map out where people from San Francisco or Palo Alto are coming, but using privacy-protected telecom data, you can understand how San Jose fits within the broader mosaic of its neighboring communities. We're doing the same thing with connected vehicle data. So as technologies like dedicated short-range communications or DSRC and 5G come online, these are going to be really exciting tools for traffic planners to utilize, but they don't have the time to learn how to interpret telematics data. It is its own language, its own attributes. So we've pre-built an architecture that allows San Jose staff to interpret these data sources as they come online without having to learn a new skill or a new language. Some of the particular use cases we're looking there is it's been made clear to us that a priority in San Jose is to reduce vehicle miles traveled. And so some of these things that we're analyzing here is you can isolate a Class 8 freight truck, for example, and identify that a good deal of travel is specifically because this factory has to be connected to this warehouse across the city. So in terms of a long-range community plan, you can actually identify ways you can reduce traffic, not by building more roads, but in fact by clustering certain businesses together. And then one of the concepts that Robin and his team were emphasizing to us was the importance of urban villages. And so part of what the system is designed to do is allow you to understand essentially micro communities within San Jose and their distinct and unique needs. So you can identify the interrelationship between demographics, businesses, the built environment, traffic patterns, etc., all within a few clicks of the mouses, so that city staff don't have to do laborious and time-consuming, expensive external surveys. They can, if they have a concept and a theory in their head, they can just sit down at a computer and run the numbers and see and accelerate the decision-making process with a higher level of confidence. Going to the future, one of the things that the data library at San Jose makes really exciting for us is, as Albert was saying, the power of analytics is actually the unsung hero in data analytics is actually clean, comprehensive, and reliable data. And so as San Jose is building a foundation that can ingest data from all these future sources, it's putting us in a position where we have to consider what are the future needs of a CIO 5 or 10 years from now in the data governance considerations. So for example, the system, one of the things we're following quite closely is the California Consumer Privacy Act. As mentioned, we're looking at ingesting telecom data and connected vehicle data. So the system is already pre-configured and architectured so that it would be fully compliant if you wanted to bring in these types of private sector data sources. The data is all owned by the city, which is a big thing that was emphasized to us, the importance of not building in vendor lock-in. So this will allow San Jose to bring in data from any source in any format and export the clean and processed data and insights to any third-party application or any in-house built application within San Jose. We've embedded machine and deep learning into the platform. Again, this goes back to our core focus that the existing experts shouldn't necessarily be external data scientists. Like data science has, like we are those people who do have fun, that 1% of people who have fun playing with raw data. But the actual city engineers and the city planners who have to make day-to-day decisions which will impact the community for generations, they don't have time to learn all these new skills. And so a lot of what we're trying to do is build in these types of machine and deep learning analytics so that people who are experts in social services, for example, can get the types of insights they need without needing to, without being held hostage to a limited capacity of people with data science backgrounds. And going into the future, we've built out the platform so that it can support, like, for example, the types of gang and violence data, like transportation data and where people are coming from and how they're moving with the community. I would imagine that could have been a powerful source of data for Albert's study, and vice versa. The degree to which park locations drives community traffic patterns and congestion patterns is something that this is the power of that comprehensive data library that Rob was talking about. All these systems would build upon each other. So in closing, I want to thank you for having the opportunity to present the work here. I just want to emphasize, in the last year, our team has presented at 37 conferences across the United States, Canada, Europe, the Middle East. We recently met with governments from South Korea to India, and we have the coolest job because we get to see how cities all around the world are developing their smart city visions, and I cannot stress how the team and the vision you have here in San Jose is very, very special. We were in London a couple weeks ago because the London government was actually trying to understand from us how we were able to do these things, and in particular, what was it about San Jose that made these types of insights possible in San Jose that are not possible in London. Similarly, we're off to New York City next week, and then Oslo, Norway the week after, Arlington, Virginia the week after that, because increasingly I think it's becoming evident that San Jose's vision and their approach to smart cities is becoming a model for around the world. In fact, next month, the American Planning Association is hosting their annual convention in San Francisco. And not only has San Jose been nominated for a national award for the best use of technology to build smarter communities, we were called this morning and they asked us if we could actually set up a special display, as they're bringing thousands of planners from across America. And they want to look at the work San Jose has done to use things like crash data to build a more comprehensive view of urban planning. So thank you very much for your hospitality, and I'll turn it over to Rob.
So we've had the opportunity to go through a couple things with you. One is all that comes into setting the foundations so that we can be ready with data. And that is the technical build. It's creating the resources where everything goes. It's about creating that community portal so that the public can be engaged around questions that are meaningful and profound to it. But that readiness is only the starting point, and we want to be very clear and upfront and honest with you about that. One of the steps and pieces that is essential is building the people power that goes behind this. That includes the partnerships like you've seen today. It also includes the data governance, which you've heard a couple different times is going to be definitive whether or not we're going to be successful in the years ahead. Another component is departmental use, just getting the critical mass across the city to be using a common environment and to contribute to it and to take from it and to build it through its use. And the last piece is to talk about the maintenance and support. This is really the technology and the continued investment in the people. But all of that aims at the brilliance at the end, and to use the parlance of Albert, to become the most data innovative city in the world, same as we're trying to be as part of the Smart Cities vision, the most innovative city in North America by 2020. And this is just a great start at it. I want to take a quick moment to say thank you to our partners. Silicon Valley Community Foundation funded part of these partnerships. Urban Logic has been a remarkable team, Stanford as well. We also have some partnerships with the University of San Francisco. We're talking about one with the University of San Jose State University for those data engagements so we can keep on practicing these skills and building up that environment. And with that, Dolan?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Rob had written a very nice script for me to bookend this, but I'm going to go a little bit rogue for a second. I also want to thank the team. 3 weeks ago when we were talking about this agenda topic, it was, oh, we're not ready. And I said, yeah, I think we're ready. And so hopefully you appreciated what you saw today. And what we're trying to do today was take feedback from the committee members and Vice Mayor Jones as well, that you want to see a little bit better connection between this technology work and the infrastructure and what we were building up to and how how it connected to community benefit. So we went a little long and a little deep today, but you can see how we're kind of building up to this environment, this virtual library, which we can now use to predict gang violence, which we can use to predict where crashes are going to happen and take action to mitigate them. So in the coming months, we're going to be working on actually publishing these data stories. I'm not the 1% that likes running around with raw data and diving into raw data in my data pool or data lake, whatever we call it. So we'll be coming up those top-down perspectives, and of course we're very excited that we have been nominated for the Smart City Technology Lead as a result of this work. Another success, I just got a tweet from the AccessHe Side team. The Wi-Fi network is up and running, so now 6,000 households in the James Look area can access free public AccessHe Side Wi-Fi. All righty. Last but not least, we're going to do transition it back to Chair Diep for questions and answers.
So we'll start with public comment. Once again, Victor Sin and Blair Beekman.
Good afternoon again, Mayor and Council members. I'm Victor Sin, representing ACLU. Regarding the projects that identifies gang and youth violence, I have the following questions. Most of my questions have to do with the granularity of the raw data. In other words, are they at the level of individuals, or are they at a level where it's already abstracted, to some statistics? So the first question, is the project assigning risk scores to neighborhoods or to individuals? So from the presentation, I cannot tell whether the risk scores are actually assigned to individuals and then you abstract for presentation purposes, or whether, the risk scores are truly at some kind of block level or neighborhood level. And then, is the project pulling data, about particular individuals? And in terms of the school violence data, I think I heard that, the information comes from either some reports or from some task force. I would like to understand, whether the data are collected from all schools or just public schools or some subset thereof. Is the project creating a database where you compile personal information? And also, what types of machine learning or AI algorithms is the project applying to the data set? In terms of predictions, is the risk map, as shown in the presentation, the only type of prediction made, or are there other types of predictions? If there are other types of predictions, are they at the individual level, meaning predictions about individuals, or predictions about neighborhoods? Thank you.
Do you guys have a response?
Yeah, sorry, Blair. And this may get to other questions as well. So, as a city, we have wanted to make sure that our police, fire, and emergency management weren't getting direction from two committees. So, what we've agreed to with the chiefs as well as the chairs of the committees is that in this committee we'd be providing a higher level of detail, and that at PISFIS we'd do a deep dive into this. So there's a whole interactive tool that Chief Garcia would like to actually show at PISFIS and answer a lot of these questions. So what we would request is that we could defer that till the fall agenda when we get this item on PISFIS, and then we can do a deeper dive and make sure that the police department isn't getting direction from two committees, and also the individuals here who've worked on this with Albert are not actually physically here. So we'd like to defer that and reference that to the PISFIS committee.
Come on down, Blair. Thanks.
Hello. At the last PISFIS committee, there was a very good presentation on this subject. Victor Sin should be interested in that describes the future of what can be data collection for the issues of youth crime and it's like, I'm very, very happy with the words of Victor Sin today that, just really, brought us a good clarity to how I can think about this issue. And it's important work for all of us. And there's positive hope that, yeah, that I'm hoping for. So good luck in this work. Man, I am so inexperienced in how to talk about this stuff, but I will give it my best shot here. I first started doing this work in 2014, and we were talking in those terms of what sort of data banks, you were going to put this sort of information in, or data warehouses. Is that an issue in this arena at this time? You've talked about you have new ways of data collection, but does that mean that there's still going to be data storage warehouses that you're going to need to use? I'd like that to be a more open topic to talk about as conversation. It used to be for, the drones and surveillance, and it was a different process than the NICRIC process that you used. And so if you can learn how to make that more an open subject, that would be good. And I needed to really mention to the person from Canada, if he's from either Vancouver or Toronto, those are two different ways they work. And, there's work in Oakland right now that's incredible towards the ideas of civil rights and civil protections with data collection. I mean, honest to goodness, protecting the rights of people that I hope you can look into. That's real good work as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mayor Liccardo.
Thank you. Well, first, I just wanted to say it was really an awesome presentation. I really appreciate hearing from everybody. So thank you. Avi, Albert, thank you for your enthusiasm. And I understand there is a desire for funding for an IT team member in PRNS. Herman, really appreciate your presentation. Jill, thank you all. This is really awesome. And Artie, thanks for your work as well. We are, I know that the constraint on us is really being able to get the bandwidth to get clean data that is properly organized, coded, et cetera, into the data lake where people can splash around with it. And then, and in my terms, I know I'm getting a little technical here for folks, but actually make something useful happen. So recognizing that we have these real constraints, to help us understand better where the choke points are so we can really enable folks to be able to fly, and where do we most need the help?
I think we return back to the theme of powered by people. And there's two layers of the organization that really deserve some investment, in the sense that there's some data leadership, and that chief data officer is an important position to have to kind of coordinate some of those efforts and teach the importance of that. But also at the department level, all the successes you've seen in the city are where really smart, well-skilled people have come to bear and said, I'm going to do this because it's going to be good for us long term, and I'm going to make these analyses because they help me make decisions. And then kind of underneath both of those is the ability to partner. And the other thing that we've seen with the departments that have done exceptionally well versus the ones that have a little lower maturity is they've found other people to work with. What IT's quest is in this is to make sure that the foundation is available to all. When we do procurements and budgeting, we say if you're going to ask for things, it needs to go there first so that there's some consistency, and we're doing additive investments rather than fragmented ones. And to reinforce the role of the chief data officer, the role of privacy, the role of security in those decisions. But to circle it around, that great data leadership and those great data people are, I think, where you're going to see the most success come from, and that need the investment there.
Yeah, and a yes and to that, Rob. I think that fortunately we're on the edge of being able to kind of create the spark that begins to fuel the engine. If you've been following Barcelona at all, their chief data officer said that this year they're adding 70 people to their data team because they've been able to generate enough savings by starting to analyze the data, right? So maybe it was a good thing that we'd actually failed twice to recruit a chief data officer, because I think now we're at the right time. So to emphasize the chief data officer who can take a lot of load off of Rob, who's kind of, if you build it, they will come. Now we'll force the ball players out on the field. So with the chief data officer actually having a Safe City fellow, combining the desire to have Bloomberg certification, and kind of the fourth is, with my director hat on during the budget season, maybe some additional funding for safe city data. We can begin to generate some demonstrable efficiencies or revenue generation potentials that then people see the value in using this environment, and it becomes kind of a positive feedback loop.
Right. And just to articulate, I think, a little bit more what you're saying there, Dawn, you're referring to the What Works Cities certification that we would need to achieve through Bloomberg.
Right. We've come to the point where we have, this is one of Kip's 3 Venn diagrams, but there's actually four elements to it. Is that we could see potentially up to $5 million a year in grant investment if we get certified by the Bloomberg What Works Cities. And that grant investment is a combination of doing some work in procurement and then doing a lot of work on data. So that, combined with the fact that we're starting next week to interview for the Chief Data Fellow that would be joining us for a year, and the Safe City Fellow, and with my budget hat on, the conversations about potentially some additional funding for those people to be able to invest to create that spark. I think we're kind of on the cusp of being able to generate those types of efficiencies and effectiveness out of a data architecture that then will begin to see the ability to add more people who want to use the architecture.
Okay, well, I understand the value in getting that certification and being able to position ourselves well for those external resources. So I'll just, since it's all been hinted at, I'll start the opening salvo in the budget battles. And if there might be an MBA that would articulate clearly what exactly is needed from a resource standpoint to put us in position to be there, that would be helpful, so the whole council could see that clearly. And with a particular emphasis on what I know is going to be less helpful, which is one-time money. Because I know you need human beings, and human beings need to get paid one year to the next. But in the absence of ongoing money, what could we do with one time? That would be a helpful thing to know.
Got it. And most of my office works on one-time funding, so actually I've done pretty well so far. So
you got a lot of
action item taken. We were waited for those 3 dreaded letters to come up and get started.
Right. Okay. Appreciate that you're holding your team together with staples and chewing gum right now. On that same note, I know that we're leveraging the fellowship program for our chief data scientists. I just had a conversation today with Dinesh Nirmal, the head of IBM's Silicon Valley office. As you know, they're primarily data scientists and AI focused down in Coyote Valley, and he wants to lend help. And I'm just about to hit the send button, but on an email connecting various folks. But he had various ideas that included committing data scientists, for example, to the city for 10 hours a week, or, hey, come to us with a problem, let us try to work on it for you, whatever it might be. So I'll send it to some of you guys, some of you folks, and if you could just make sure we know best how to respond and be in position, that would be helpful. I'm guessing there are others, although Dinesh is particularly generous and wanting to help our community, I'm guessing there are others that we could be reaching out to at Splunk or other companies here in the city, and I'd be more than happy to do that to the extent that's helpful and doesn't just create more work for you guys, because I know it's not always easy managing external resources. Thank you.
Great, thanks. We appreciate that.
Councilmember Davis.
Thank you. I really resented the 1% comment, Rob. It's 25% up here today, so I guess we're overrepresented because I love raw data. I hope you're wrong, but I think you're probably right. And I appreciate the stories too, since I don't get to play in data anymore. But the point I wanted to make was I appreciate that we're becoming a model around the world, and you mentioned both security and privacy as parts where we are excelling. I would like to add ethics to that list, especially in addressing any biases that can come up in AI and ML. Not only in the inputs like facial recognition, which we already know are issues, but how we interpret what comes out of any machine learning and all of our results. So I just wanted, nobody talked about that, and I just want to daylight it. I know we're not there yet, but you did have some stories, which means you had some analysis, which means this issue is already coming up. So I just wanted to daylight that, because security and privacy are well and good and definitely necessary, but we need to add ethics in there. And when we have a chief data officer, I would hope that that person would be well aware and well trained in that area.
Councilmember Jimenez.
Thank you. I appreciate everyone's work. As a relatively new member of this committee, this hasn't been an issue that I've been sort of very much engaged in, but my interest was really piqued today, and I very much appreciate it. One of the concerns I've had all along, not being intimately sort of engaged in some of these conversations, has been my concern that the city has really been involved in work. I think the comment was tech for technology's sake, for tech's sake, I think it was the comment. But anyway, hearing some of the stories today, I think really enlightened me to know that some of the work that you all be doing is really going towards solving some of these critical problems and challenges that we're having around the city. And so my interest was piqued. I'm very much interested in that, and I think that's wonderful that that's the path we're going down. The other thing I thought was important to me, or was important that was said that really stood out to me, is just the human element, and I appreciate you mentioning it, Rob, because one of the things I've wondered, and it was a question that I had written down, but I think you sort of answered it, but one of the things that concerns me as we talk about data and technology and such is how the human element sort of plays out in all of this, right? And the focus on certainly on data, but just trying to think about how because this is a city built for people, right? And so always curious about that interaction, and so you all touched on that today, and I very much appreciate that. The question I had was, and just to I'm trying to wrap my head around some of the stuff we've talked about. It's a lot to take in. But so when it gets to the point when we have this data library, it's clean data, it's consistent, it's accessible, we have the governance structure in place. How do we, just in practice, would it be, we have this digital library or whatever it may be with all this data there, and a company can come in and essentially just access it and say, what is it that we want to solve? Would they need to get city approval? Can I, as a resident, just go in, pull all this data off, and start seeking out solutions in my garage, for example? I'm just trying to think about in practice how it would work once it's established.
Sure. So on the Open Data Community Architecture design, it's designed with basically two forks. One is that it is that compendium of knowledge and access for the city. So it would be a resource that people could attach to, and if they're assigned rights to, get to certain information. But their rights would be what we call least permissive. So you're only allowed to access what you need to access to do your job or what that you've been granted for a period of time to do for a project. There's another fork on that where we would say that information is good for publication. That could be to the community data portal, and it could be to what we call data lakes. So just to kind of use our water analogy as well, you have your data lake that everyone fishes from. There's data wells that are around a specific topic. For example, you might have a partner around disasters and the data associated with the disaster in the area, or traffic, or housing, or homelessness, and so forth, or public safety. And grants on rights would be specific around those and time-bound as well. But that design allows you to do three things. One is use it internally very freely, but respecting security, privacy, and in the future ethics, but also share it with partners. That can be academia, where you have a partnership and say there's some data science that we want to go at with Stanford or San Jose State University. And in the future, it could also be with companies that we have partnerships with, say like Waze / Google or Apple around traffic information if you want to share it. But the foundation allows you to at least say yes if it's in your interest. There's a lot more to go through in terms of, is it an agreement that you would agree to? So it allows the city to say, yeah, that's in our interest and we're protecting things well enough. That data foundation will allow us to say yes if we then determine that that partnership or engagement is worthwhile. But the design of the ODCA is to support all that in the future. The truth is, the last thing I'll say on that is there's still more work to be done on that to make sure that's a practical model.
The other question I had was, I think back to, I think it was the last presidential election. There was a lot of data analysis that was done on exit polling and things of that nature, and certainly a lot of people were wrong. And obviously, that data came from individuals that were reporting how they had voted and such. But that sort of raises the question for me: is how do we? And I think it was a slide that One of the gentlemen talked about the gangs and sort of these things that drive some of that activity and such, and I think there was an accuracy rate on there. And so what I'm curious about is, for someone that's not intimately sort of familiar with data and such, is the data ever wrong? And I mean, I suspect it is, right? It's not foolproof, right? Exactly. And so I'm curious as to how as we venture down this path, how do we make certain that we're making, I think we all strive to make wise decisions tied to real, correct data. And so what's in place there to make certain that that's there?
Kip Harkness, Deputy City Manager. I'll take this one. I would say this gets back to our principles around innovation, and we have three. One is that we champion the customer. We put the people that matter at the center of the work that we're doing. Two is that we learn from data. And then three is iterate to improve, and it's that last one that's important. Presidential elections are kind of one-off things, and you either get them or you don't. But most of what we do is iterative and repetitive, and sometimes hundreds of times, thousands of times, or tens of thousands of times a day. So we have the opportunity to ground truth and test and learn repeatedly, which means we'll make mistakes. That's part of the service delivery model. What's different now is we'll be more likely to know that we've made a mistake, and hopefully begin to more rapidly learn from it. An example was iterate to improve on our noticing. We had an experience in 2017. We've had a more recent experience. We've learned from both, and there's still more to learn in the future iterations of how we notice people in floods. And so this time was better. There are some imperfections. We'll be better next time around. And I would say the same thing about almost all of these. But in the end, it will be people who make the call on most of these, and that's why I do think we're going to have to both build our capacity in terms of the people doing the data, and build our leadership capacity in terms of the people using that data, so they're comfortable to make those decisions and then learn from them when they make mistakes.
Wonderful, thank you, Rob. I don't know if you.
Yes, I'll just make one analog and that was one of the things that Urban Logic found, right? Is when you combine your economic development work with your traffic planning work, with your planning and development work, you can actually cross-corroborate some of that information or find where there might be flaws. On Kip's point, then, to iterate to improve that, hey, we're seeing one pattern here, another pattern here, what's the truth? We can dive a little further in rather than just testing one effort. So that open data community architecture gives you a couple different vectors of information that should reveal this more often.
Yeah, thank you for that. And one thing that stands out based on some of the comments you just made is what I have found being in the city for a short time is that sometimes that interdepartmental communication isn't always there, right? Here you see a beautiful example, and maybe in some of these examples where folks are communicating shared information and cross-corroborating some of the data and such. But I feel like that's a struggle that the city has. And so I assume that some of those strategies and that development is sort of outside the scope of this, and I wonder if, meaning just related to data and such, but I think it's going to take a higher level sort of approach, and I'm wondering if, Dave's not here, the city manager, but curious how this is being sort of folded into some of the work that's being done there to start sort of laying the groundwork internally within the departments to better communicate.
We actually, perhaps you're eavesdropping on the conversation we had earlier today in the leadership team, but we were talking about just this issue and how the city manager has laid out his enterprise priorities, for example, and each one of those, as we would look at it, is a wicked problem that cuts across departments. So if you're looking at homelessness, or if you're looking at beautifying San Jose, there's no one department that owns that, and it is precisely those cross-departmental initiatives which are in response to new condition, which are the most complicated ones, and those are also precisely the ones where we need to bring technology and data to bear in service of the people. So I don't have an answer, but I think you've put your finger right on what we think is really the most complicated thing we do, because I think by and large our department heads do a really good job at managing their downward service delivery. It's where it involves 2 departments or 3 departments or 5 where the increasing complexity we often fail to meet expectations.
Okay.
And to take that a step further, Kip and council members, so the chief data officer role that we aspire to have, I mean, data governance is actually the #1 thing that person needs to work on, which is managing data across the department. So we have a single view, not a siloed departmental view. You would not probably be surprised that when Bloomberg did our evaluation of our data capabilities, the one thing we got a big fat 0 on was data governance. So this kind of loops back into the Bloomberg certification and the chief data officer, and the work we need to do is that we do need to come up with a data governance approach that ensures that, to Albert's point, that the name of the street name in parks and recreation is the same name as the street name in transportation is the same name as the street name somewhere else. And so we do have part of an answer, which is that is one of the priority works that the chief data fellow would be working on starting in May.
Okay, thank you so much for the responses. I appreciate the work.
So thank you. I'm glad to hear that we are getting honored as what the most innovative city, something, an award. Someone mentioned something.
Well, we might, based on Urban Logic's work, we might have to expand our most innovative city in America by 2020.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
The most innovative city in the world by 2020.
That's the goal, but right. I think we're short. But so we're getting an award somewhere with people coming to San. That's all I meant to say. So also, I'm gratified that Kip and Dolan have kind of worked their way around to incorporate my request for infotainment, and also for demonstration, the kind of data stories, because I really think that it's important, as we talk about all the tech and all the innovation, we really show the applications for this stuff, so that folks like Councilmember Jimenez or folks watching at home, Facebook Live and Twitter, not Twitter, YouTube, actually, see the importance of all we're talking about here and the actual applications. So thank you for that. I wanted to see if there were any potential plans to kind of invest more in using this to have a public safety application, because I think that's what I'm hearing out in the community a lot. Is there any way we can do this without being too big brothery?
Yeah, so a couple positive things is we are working to keep Albert with the city and continue his work. And so I may have just given away our negotiating bargaining chip there, but I thought that'd be important to say. Yeah, and as part of the, as I said before, as part of the budget conversations, we're beginning to see an intersection of a number of things that are synergistic together, which is the chief data fellow, the Safe City Strategy fellow, the Bloomberg certification, and then with my budget hat on during the budget conversation, if there was some additional funding, that those people could actually find the most valuable opportunity and have some funding to implement it. Similar to the broadband strategy, where we had some funding to work out with PwC how to develop our broadband and digital inclusion strategy. If there was some funding to allow that group to be able to do something, I think we'd see some really powerful return on our investment now that we have this environment in place.
Sure. And since you mentioned it, Albert, you're what, 7 months, 8 months into your 10-month fellowship. Are you willing to stay with the city, sir?
That's a strong question. I'll have to talk to my people. They'll get back to you. Thank you. But most likely, I'll see you soon.
Sure. All right. Great. Last thing, do we have, beyond what we showed here today, are there future collaborations in store with Urban Logic?
I'm going to actually turn that over to Jill to answer that question.
Sure. So Urban Logic has been an extremely amazing partner for us. We engaged with them under one of the grants through Rob's program. So that was kind of a one-time funding. Urban Logic has been willing to continue to work with us, but one of the real challenges is the funding mechanism. It's not, in this case, it's actually not the funding, it's how to continue to engage with them in a way that works and to build on this platform.
All right. Well,
and Jill, maybe just I'm sorry, Rob, why don't you take it first? I'll finish up.
So Jill and I are working on a contractual method to see what our options are to keep using that platform, but we'll have to work with procurement on that.
Yeah, I'll take it one step further. I mean, having spent 25 years in the technology industry and having seen what they're done, I mean, I think there certainly is an avenue to discuss the possibility of this being a unique service. I haven't seen any other platform that does what it does out there. So whether that's a unique service or we can continue under a demonstration project, those are things that I personally would like to look at and see if they're feasible within the city's existing policy.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, we are the creators of the box, that is the council. So if you need us to change its shape, it would be helpful to know that, and then we can do it. I understand you guys are really, you're confined in so many ways by the rules we have here in the city, and just want to encourage you to let us know when we can change them.
Sure. And until I think of a better transition method, on with the show, on to the next one, D3.
Great, thanks. So Michelle, if you could come down. So while we're doing this is where Councilmember DF, we could probably use some more help on the infotainment. But while we're doing a transition between presenters, or we could do the Jeopardy theme or something like that. Just to kind of set the stage, we've been talking about the internet and access to the internet. And we clearly know how the knowledge and opportunity of the internet transformed the lives of everyday residents. But also, when you look at businesses, the internet is changing the way many organizations operate. And while some companies like Sears are still struggling with that model, that shift is taking place. And getting a 100-year-old city government like San Jose to keep up with the internet era is no small task, and that's what the digital services strategy is all about. So now I'll turn over our presentation to our digital services lead, Michelle Tong, and our Director of Communications, Rosario Navas.
Thank you, Dolan. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Mr. Mayor, committee members, fellow staff, and members of the public. I'm Michelle Tong, and I'm the Digital Services Lead in the City Manager's Office of Civic Innovation and Digital Strategy. In today's presentation, we're going to cover 4 main themes. First, why having a citywide strategy for digital services matters to our residents. Second, what a digital transformation journey looks like in government. Third, how we're already doing this work in San Jose. And finally, what we need to do next. First, let's start with some definitions. When we say digital services, we're referring to transactional or informational services that are online and used by the general public, especially our residents and businesses, to achieve a specific goal. So an example of a transactional service is applying for a building permit, or an informational service might be looking up your recycling collection company. There are multiple ways in which a digital service could be delivered, such as websites or mobile apps, which are both currently used by the city. Other possible channels are text message and chatbot, neither of which we're currently using in the city, but which we are interested in exploring. So right now, as a city, we're responsible for dozens of transactional and informational services, some of which are already digital from end to end, some of which are partially digital, and some of which are still largely delivered via the phone or in-person appointments. And at this point, you might be thinking, well, this sounds pretty straightforward. I mean, what's the big deal about moving our services online? Wasn't the internet invented almost 30 years ago? Well, that is true, but our services were not designed for the internet. And our organization wasn't designed for the internet either. After all, the City Council of San Jose first convened 169 years ago, in 1850, which makes us many times older than PayPal, Zoom, Google, or pretty much any other tech company here in the Valley. It's going to take a major effort to reorient our people, processes, and technology to internet-era ways of working. And as hard as it is, we must do it because digital services matter to our residents. Putting our services online, if we do it right, makes it easier to get things done, makes services more accessible and inclusive to all our residents, and builds trust in the city's ability to deliver. Thus far, we've been taking a very decentralized, organic approach to putting our services online. So, for example, for many years, residents have been able to go online to apply for certain types of permits or to borrow electronic library books. Now, when it launched in July 2017, My San Jose was the city's first major investment in a centralized platform for digital service delivery. It turned 6 different services, reporting abandoned vehicles, graffiti, illegal dumping, potholes, streetlight outages, and other requests into an end-to-end digital experience for residents. And it's been successful enough that we're all eager to see more services available via My San Jose as soon as possible. But the truth is, that those 6 services in My San Jose are just the tip of the iceberg in the number of city services that we offer. And we need a plan for the rest of the iceberg. What that means is that in order to successfully bring more services into My San Jose or other digital platforms like the website or a chatbot, we first need to have a city-wide strategy for prioritizing, redesigning, and delivering city services to work in the internet age. We need a big picture plan that can guide decisions and align the organization on investments in people, process, and technology. To make this a little more concrete, here's an example of an important and high-profile service that our residents would love to see digital. As you may know, junk pickup is a great service, and the Environmental Services Department has a vision for how it could be even better. ESD does extensive outreach to promote this as a free alternative to illegal dumping. They have postcards, radio ads, social media campaigns, and more. And the ads direct interested residents to the city website to learn more. Once a resident is on the city website, there are clear instructions, but ultimately residents must call the hauler themselves. And that means that the burden is on the resident to figure out who their recycling company is and what number to call. The city provides tools to help the resident do this, but it's still multiple extra steps that they have to take. Here's a quote from a real customer who responded to one of ESD's customer surveys, showing that customers appreciate the service, but find that calling the hauler is often a burdensome process. Pickup was as stated. My only problem was calling to schedule the pickup on 3 different days. 2 times I hung up when it went into voicemail. I waited a week and called and spoke to a person. So here's a customer who wants to do the right thing and dispose of junk properly. But in the handoff to the hauler, the customer is encountering inconveniences like requesting the service during business hours, waiting on hold, and playing phone tag that make it harder for that customer to do the right thing. Being a customer-focused organization, ESD has a vision for an easier digital experience for residents. So first, you'd go online to schedule an appointment with the same interface regardless of who your hauler is. Second, you'll get a text reminder the day before, or maybe an email depending on what your preference is. Third, you set out the items and you're done. And on our side, the city will have a digital record of the number of appointments, the turnaround time, and other data that we can learn from to iterate and improve. That's what it would mean to design our services according to internet-era ways of working. It seems so obvious, right? But the thing is, a great customer experience does not happen by accident. It only happens by design. So to make this a reality, we will need to intentionally design the end-to-end journey that we want our customers to have, including the parts that are managed by vendors. And then we'll need to sweat the people, process, and technology details to deliver that experience every time. The future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. Given that we have more than a few certified science fiction geeks in the crowd, including our chair, I thought this statement from William Gibson was an apt quote. Our task in the city of San Jose is to bring the future to how we deliver services to the public. Fortunately, even in the relatively slow-moving world of government, we have some inspiring examples to look to. And for a change, the cutting-edge blueprint doesn't come from the Silicon Valley, but from across the pond, the United Kingdom. So I'll take you on a brief tour of their digital transformation journey. They kicked off in 2010 with a forceful recommendation from the UK's digital champion who called for revolution, not evolution, in how this government uses the internet to interact with citizens and businesses. What she meant was that the UK needed to be bold in being laser focused on vastly increasing the range, usage, and quality of online transactions to deliver the greatest impact, less hassle for citizens and businesses, and great efficiency. To lead this bold mission, the first thing the UK did was to establish a central team called the Government Digital Service, or GDS for short, in the Cabinet Office. And this group popularized the saying, the team is the unit of delivery. emphasizing the importance of creating empowered, cross-functional teams who work near each other and can move quickly. They started with just a handful of people in 2011, and they now number over 850 public servants on many teams across the country. What they did first was not to write a strategy, but just to start building and delivering so that they could learn and iterate. And less than a year later, they launched gov.uk as the new home of all government services and information for UK residents. Designed, written, and organized around what users need to get done to result in services that are simpler, clearer, and faster. Once they started building, they began to get a handle on just how large the task of digital transformation was. So they started a public inventory of their transactional services. This is a screenshot I grabbed last week showing that they currently have over 780 services with over 1 billion completed transactions a year. And it wasn't until 2 years into their work that they published a government digital strategy, which established a vision for services that are digital by default and so straightforward and convenient that people will choose to use them. And the strategy contains 14 actions from improving digital department leadership, that is, digital leadership within all of the departments, to building common technology platforms that different departments can collaborate and use together. In order to scale the work, the central team issued a digital service standard that helps departments build and run effective user-centered services. So currently in the UK, all public-facing transactional services need to meet this standard, and there have been hundreds of assessments for all of their services against this standard since it was introduced. And as a result of taking this bold approach, the UK has saved over £3.5 billion since they started this work. And their success in moving quickly is attributable to having a strong mandate and governance structure, which enabled them to drive change from the center. So, for example, through what's known as spend controls, all the government agencies need to meet specific standards in order to get approval for spending. And the key there is that that's a process that helps make it a priority or give permission to departments to focus on the needs of the people who are using the service. And it also is a means of ensuring that the spending is aligned with the government's overall digital services strategy. Finally, it helps to discover and solve problems earlier on in the process. So the UK is now 9 years into their digital transformation journey, and they do still have much more to do with almost 800 services. So they're focusing on the scale and sustainability of their transformation, for example, by training over 10,000 public servants in the digital skills needed to transform public services. And many other governments are now following in the UK's footsteps. Because one of the great things about the public sector is that we can openly share and borrow from each other's playbooks, whether that's London learning from our transportation data practices or us learning from the UK government. So at the national level, countries from the United States to Canada, Argentina, Singapore, Italy, Mexico, and Australia are all in the process of establishing digital teams. At the state level, Governor Newsom recently announced a plan in his 2019-2020 budget to create an Office of Digital Innovation with an initial staff of 50 and an annual budget of 15 million. And other states such as Georgia and Massachusetts also have digital teams. And at the local level, cities such as Boston, Miami, Orlando, Austin, and San Francisco are all prioritizing digital services as part of their strategy for improving service delivery to residents. And then, of course, the city of San Jose. And that's where we want to spend our time for the rest of the presentation. So, how are we approaching digital services in San Jose? Well, like the UK, we have a bold and aspirational call to action, as Dolan reminded us so vividly at the beginning of this committee meeting. Adopted by the Council in 2016, the Smart City Vision challenges us to be a user-friendly city, one that creates digital platforms to improve transparency, empowers residents to actively engage in the governance of their city, and makes the city more responsive to the complex and growing demands of our community. Later that same year, in 2016, the city immediately got busy building and delivering My San Jose, working in a way that was much different from prior technology projects. For one, we focused on the customer's end-to-end experience, as well as the employee's experience managing the process on the other side. Instead of throwing the specifications over the wall to a vendor, we assigned a product manager, Chris Mills, pictured here, to drive that vision. And before we officially launched it, we tested it with real users with an alpha launch, during which we were able to fix a bunch of bugs, add features, and process over 9,000 real requests. Since that launch, we've continued to get strong feedback about how we can make My San Jose work better for residents and staff. And all that feedback is a gift because it shows us where we need to improve, and it demonstrates our residents' demand for digital services that simply work. And in fact, My San Jose has continued to be the proving ground for more agile, user-centered practices that are necessary for delivering great digital services. In the slides that follow, I'll be sharing lessons learned from our continued work on My San Jose that we think we can apply to other services. So, recognizing from the UK and our own experience that the team is the unit of delivery, we're now piloting a central digital services team that will enable us to deepen and scale the work we started with My San Jose 1.0. The team members pictured here, who are also in the audience, have capabilities and titles that are common at Google and Airbnb, but foreign to government. User experience design, content design, product management, these are all competencies that we need to design and deliver quality services in the internet era. And yet, it took a lot of effort to work within our existing organizational structure to have a central team in which IT expertise is co-located with business and design expertise. And we're not done. The reason this label is only partially colored is because it's still a pilot, a work in progress. And we're also finding that navigating our complex organizational structure takes up a lot of energy for our central team. What you see here is a diagram of the org structure for My San Jose. Don't worry about digesting all the detail. The point is that this is complicated. So at a high level, the blue circle on the left is the product team, or the digital services team, which I described on the previous slide. And to improve end-to-end service delivery, this team interacts with a core leadership team comprised of 6 different service owners for each of the services offered through My San Jose across 4 different departments. And each of those service owners work with the service team that actually delivers the service. There's a lot of different relationships and stakeholders to manage to make sure we're all on the same page. And even though the central team is less than 2 months old, we're finding that the team is a critical enabler for working across those organizational boundaries. We're proving that building and delivering can be fast when the right conditions are in place. And these conditions include having internal staff with the right digital skills and contracts for ongoing maintenance and iteration. Since My San Jose 1.0 first launched in July 2017, the city has released 6 iterations and improvements, much of it thanks to the stewardship of our product manager in IT, Charles Amos. What you're seeing on this particular screen is a sneak preview. It's a prototype of a new feature that we'll be releasing soon in version 1.7 of My San Jose to set expectations about the typical resolution time for each request category. This feature went from idea to implementation within 2 months, thanks to rapid collaboration between the digital services team, service owners, and our vendors. And what this shows is consistent with the lessons learned from the UK, that if you assemble a team with the right skills, it's possible to move quickly. We're also influenced by the UK's approach to digital service standards. As we work towards a more consistent experience across the existing 6 My San Jose services, we're effectively setting best practices for user-centered design. What you see here is one of our My San Jose objectives and key results for the first quarter of 2019. Based on external and internal feedback, one of our key areas of focus is building trust with the individuals who report through My San Jose. And to do that, we are implementing standards that we think should be applied across all of our online services, such as having a very clear, simple definition for what each service does, setting expectations about target resolution time, and asking for feedback after every transaction. And as we do this work, we're delving into the complexities of governance for processes and systems, which proves the need for driving change from the center, similar to the role of the central team in the UK as a catalyst. Again, don't worry, you're not going to be quizzed on this diagram. I'll walk you through the key points. On the left, in the light blue, are different customer-facing channels that residents interact with, whether it's the My San Jose mobile app, the website, live chat, or a phone number. And behind these customer experiences are multiple systems that all need to be integrated, managed, and kept in sync. So shown in the middle column are different aspects of the city's customer relationship management system, which is managed by IT. And all of the My San Jose service requests go through this system, as do any calls or live chats from the customer contact center. On the far right are the work order systems, all of which are owned by the departments. And so that's a lot of systems that need to be kept in sync. It's ideal for giving the departments control over their business process, but it also means that as a city, we need to be proactive and thoughtful about how we integrate our customer-facing apps and central platform with the department work order systems. For example, if we want to make changes to the residents' experience of My San Jose on the front end, do our departments have the right IT resources and design resources to make those same changes on the back end? Who gets to make decisions about what changes are the priority, and who will implement and fund those changes? So those are some of the questions that we need to work through in our digital services strategy, not just for My San Jose, but for other services. And finally, because we're working in local government with constrained resources, we're already thinking about scale and sustainability. I've talked a lot about the central team so far, but ultimately the central team's role is to be an enabler for the rest of the organization. And just as the UK has been investing heavily in training, we see that as being a big part of our strategy here in San Jose. And that's why last fall, in a partnership with the communications team, we piloted a Digital Services Academy training on how to create user-centered content for the website for 10 of our most popular services, which were represented by 20 staff from over 12 departments. And this training proved the value of sharing tools and also showed that citywide alignment and prioritization of the user experience is necessary to support these staff in making the types of improvements that they want to make things easier for residents. So, now that you're up to speed on what we've been up to, let's talk about what we need to do next. On our immediate horizon, we are in the process of evaluating and pre-qualifying a pool of consultants with expertise in digital service transformation. And we expect to establish a pool of consultants by the end of April. Once we've done that, our next step will be to develop a service inventory similar to the UK's that will help us get our arms around exactly how big that iceberg is and set the stage for prioritization. In the second half of this year, we plan to develop our digital services strategy, which will tackle key questions in order to guide, align, and prioritize citywide investments in people, process, and technology. Some of those key questions are around governance structure, centralized versus decentralized staffing, benchmarks from local governments, developing common platforms, when to choose to build services with internal staff or whether to buy or procure, how we might grow our procurement toolkit to help us buy good digital services, and establishing a framework for choosing the right channels for each customer segment. So in closing, let's make a plan for the rest of the iceberg. I'm incredibly excited about this work, and I believe that now is the right time for us to make a bold step to make a difference for our residents and businesses. And I'll hand it back to Dolan.
Thanks, Michelle. We did make an attempt to make the iceberg animated and bobbing up and down in the water and a few things. Got a little distracted, so that infotainment, we'll work on that some more. Kip has some closing remarks. Just one thing I want to say is Michelle kind of, I think, glossed over a major accomplishment with the team, which is co-locating information technology and the user experience designers and basically the business people and the process designers all in the same team. That is something that huge private sector companies struggle with. That is something that systems integrators struggle with. It's something that I've struggled with in my past career. I was the architect for the largest client server project in the world in the early 2000s. It was 150,000 function points. And I've learned firsthand the complexities of the user interface and the technology working together and getting it done right the first time as opposed to the passing it over the fence. So I think Michelle has made a great leap forward for the city. I thank Rob for loaning Charles to us. Thank Charles for not jumping off the deep end when he learned he was going to have to move from the IT floor 11 up to the civic innovation floor 16, but I think it's a major step forward. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Kip for some closing remarks. Oh, I'm sorry, I'll turn it back to Councilmember Dieppe.
Sure, we'll go to public comment. Blair, you want to come on down?
Hi, thank you. For this item and for the previous item, I should have mentioned that I should start with the European models for data collection. Kip Harkness mentioned these a few times ago. I think are really important to this process, and just to remind everybody that what you already know, that I feel that they're very good examples, and I'm very worried that the Americanized commercial model is going to be in trouble in a few years. Yeah, we're all feeling pretty cool about it now is my feeling, but in a few years' time it's going to something's going to unravel, and so I wish you luck. I think we can all really count on the European model from what I'm understanding. Thank you for the city manager's newsletter. Just out of the blue, because that offers ideas of openness. Hopefully I can talk about ideas of openness at this time. I think it's a great idea. I'm very happy with it. Thank you. I feel the police should, and the city, should learn the ideas of what short-term means and adaptability, and the ideas of adaptability with law enforcement, with both law enforcement practices and the use of technology. Thank you for creating the working groups. I hope the public working group, like my level of group, will be can learn how to develop into a more full open experience for how more people, the community, everyday community, can be invited to the process. And finally, as we are finally trying to leave the residue of the paranoid fall of 2018, I hope we can return to the ideas of good, open transparency between the people of different San Jose government departments. I feel this sort of process can help with how to be more open with the entire community in the future as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Davis?
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle, for the presentation. Really appreciate getting this all laid out. I have one question about this slide that was on the what we need to do next, inventory transactional services. There are two upcoming milestones, and I just want to, is the second one contingent on the first one? Because we've just had this conversation about how procurement is a bottleneck, and I just want to make sure that these are realistic timelines if the second one is dependent on the first one. Do we need the consultants to do the inventory?
They are not dependent. We may decide to engage consultants to help us with the inventory. And we are also through the initial stages of the procurement process for the first milestone that's listed there. So the RFQ has already been published. We've already received the bids, and we're in the evaluation phase. So two answers there. No, they're not dependent. And secondly, even if we do plan to use consultants, which we may decide to do, we have a realistic timeline that would support that.
Okay, that's really helpful because I think it was the first presentation of the meeting. One of the issues was council had already approved the going with a specific contractor in, I think it was December, which was behind the timeline of October, but we're in March and the contract hadn't been executed yet, if I saw that correctly and remember that correctly. So just want to make sure if the delay is actually that long, then if these were dependent, that would be an issue. Thank you.
Mayor Liccardo.
So I really appreciate the presentation. I don't have a sense of the metrics. How do we define success with our efforts, recognizing you got a big iceberg?
That's an excellent question. We already have a sense of what some of the metrics might be based on what we're already tracking for existing digital services. And of course, that will also be a big question for the digital services strategy to lay out for us what are the metrics that are the most important for our organization.
Okay, so we'll see that when that comes forward. Great. And then I know you, as a team, articulated on the first item that we've got some time to go to get 2.0 sort of in place. What's our current timeline? When do we expect 2.0 to?
So I think the first thing that I would say to frame it is that My San Jose 2.0, when it was funded as part of the prior year's budget process, was really a whole package of improvements to the overall end-to-end resident experience of My San Jose, which includes not just the app, but also the service delivery turnaround times. And so we have a multi-pronged approach to it, and some of those areas of work are able to proceed even as we're waiting on the procurement process for the RFP for the platform. So we're continuing to make important usability improvements in the current platform. So you'll be seeing a 1.7 release coming out with some improvements, and we expect to do future improvements of that nature. We're also actively working with the service delivery teams that are all implementing numerous types of service delivery improvements to increase the efficiency and effectiveness of those services. In terms of the RFP, as it was stated on the status slide, we're looking at Q2 of this year, the second quarter of this year, for the RFP, and then we're expecting the second quarter of 2020 for a new app to go live.
Okay, so we'll have some iterative improvements before we get to 2.0, assuming no new features, that is no new services, but improvements of the existing app. Is that how you see it?
That is the current plan. One of the mitigations that we'll be looking at is whether in that time we can have there may be one or two services that we may be able to roll out with the new app, but we'll have to explore that.
That would be great if we could. And then final question, does any of this, just given our bandwidth, is contracting out a pathway for us to accelerate any of this? Just knowing that, we just have a constraint in terms of number of people we can dedicate to the problem.
Can you clarify contracting out which part of?
Yeah, I can't say I know which part, honestly. Just, is there digital expertise we should just be taking from the private sector while we're working on all the process improvements?
So we are contracting out. We are using external vendors to do the development of the My San Jose app, both for 1.0 and for 2.0.
Okay.
We have a small internal team that owns the vision and is conducting the user research and identifying the best ways to meet the needs of our residents, but the actual development of the app will be done by external vendors.
Okay. You recognize that the 2.0 is RFPing, as you said before. I guess I was asking more broadly. That's fine. Maybe I'll ask the question offline because I'm not being very clear. Thank you very much.
I'll just ask real quick. I know we're trying to get out soon. When we're looking at the stuff for the UK and their website, did you come across any like behavioral economic stuff? Because I know the UK actually, I think, does some of that. And I'm curious. Or maybe I'll just use this as a pitch to the mayor. I would like us to experiment with behavioral economics and get people to change their behaviors in a more efficient way by little pushes. Nudges. All right. Okay. Are we leaving residents behind if we move to digital? Because not everyone has internet access. Clearly, we're working on that and just the technical skills.
Yeah, that's a great question and a very important point. And obviously, the Smart City vision itself calls on us not just to be user-friendly, but also to be inclusive. And so as we shift our services to be digital, we also want to be very intentional about how we're designing them to be inclusive and accessible. And we're thinking about that in a few different ways. So first, we're always going to have a multi-channel approach. So that means even as services go onto a web or maybe text message, being able to call someone will likely always be an option for all, if not for most, if not all services. And if you look at the data for My San Jose, we actually see that roughly 30% of our requests consistently are still coming through the call center, whether that's by phone or live chat, even though 60 to 70% are coming through via the mobile app or the website. So we do see that phone is still important. Secondly, the better we make our digital services, the more people who can use those digital services will use them, which actually frees up our resources to focus attention on the folks who can't use our digital resources. Thirdly, being digital can actually be more inclusive because it means that people don't need to make an in-person visit to City Hall during business hours, or they may be able to use an in-browser translation to help understand the content, that sort of thing. And finally, we do plan on including accessibility as part and inclusivity as part of our digital services standards. And we've already done a significant body of user research conducted by 2 of our Code for America fellows last year on how we can make more inclusive digital services in San Jose. And some of those key findings are that investing in outreach and overall simplicity are as important as language translation, and that there are other steps as a city that we can take to make sure our digital services are as accessible as possible.
Thank you. And then as we move forward with this digitization of our services, is our current workforce equipped for that, or do they need skill sets that we don't currently have?
As we mentioned in the presentation, we think that training to help our existing staff learn and practice the digital skills that are required to manage and iterate on digital services is necessary. And we see that the path forward is both a combination of training and coaching existing staff into those skills, as well as hiring in some new capabilities that we don't typically have in our current government positions, such as product managers and designers.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you. I guess that about wraps it up. Oh, wait, what's that? The producer in the back is reminding me that I need to accept the reports. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
For all the reports?
Second. Yes.
All right. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. That wraps up the meeting. We have public comment. Come on down, Blair.
Hi, this is my last in a series of speeches this week. Thank you. To the wide-ranging purposes of the Civic Innovation Department, how City of San Jose is currently addressing the future of downtown building height limits seems to speak to the economic past we are collectively trying to learn how to seriously leave and to end. Yet city government is still feeling to fight with bravado and moxie, and to continue bad economic models and processes is how to fight fire with fire, and that can both run with and run out small economic downturns at this time. We all should understand we have economic disruptions and recessions to consider not only for the next few years, but for the next 10 and 15 years. Our lives are going to go through a possible radical change in the questions of the future of fracked gasoline and individual automobile use. The demands of ourselves to be thoughtful and to go slow and to create peaceful, responsible, safe practices for a new era and the ideas of community sustainability, and in the use of care so economic models will not hurt anyone or leave people behind. These are important ideals. I feel the mayor and city government already knows how to proactively prepare for these scenarios and should be an important focus in how to address the future of downtown, Google, and airport issues. I'm a part of the work to organize more accountable technology practices that is a part of a series of measures that can help transition out of an era of 9/11 and war. The part of our work is for individuals and communities to understand peace, better reasoning, good civil rights, civil protections, good democratic practices, and better community harmony and sustainability is not just applicable towards technology, but for a number of other applications around the city and community issues. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And with that, meeting adjourned. See you in a month.